Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to my top 5 must-have players for SuperCoach 2019. Many of us would have picked our team long ago and have adjusted it ever since, but I think these 5 guys, if you were picking a team from scratch, you would lock these names in and fill the spaces out around them accordingly. Now I'll go 5 to 1, and these are on-field players. The rookies will sort themselves out. But I do have one minor exception to the rule, but I felt he couldn't be left out. But I will start that list now. And I think in at number 5, must-have, is Zach Williams in the back line. Now, he is clearly priced well under what he should be at 407k. He is clearly a stack of value, and we've seen some brilliant signs over the journey. Some may argue his JLT form or lack of exposure goes against him. And I think he only played something like a half, but I don't think that's anything to be concerned about because when he's been out there, he's looked outstanding. Obviously, we saw him average 93.9 in 2017 and 88.2 in 2016. So really strong numbers, but I think the big thing was that last year, while disappointing, and he did miss, the majority of the season, he only played the 2 games. He came back in that elimination final and scored 117. And, even in that semi-final where he scored 77, something in my mind is telling me that that was only from 3/4 of a game. You might correct me on that one, but I think he's a must-have. I think his upside is huge. I think he's a lock to average mid-90s. He scored extremely well in the time we did see him through the JLT. He is the main man out of that back line for the Giants. I think given we do have a few confident players in the back line, there are a few good options this year, that's for sure. But I think Williams has to be in everyone's team. I'm a massive fan of him, and I think he should definitely be in yours. His ball use is outstanding, run and carry, and the way he plays the game, he just mops up SuperCoach points. So I think he's going to end the year as a top 6 defender, so you may as well snap him up at this cheap price, in my opinion. In at number 4 is Brody Grundy. Now, I think we saw one of the best seasons from an individual ruck that we've seen in some time, certainly up there with some of the elite seasons that we have seen. And, from a SuperCoach perspective, unbelievable. 130.4 he averaged. It was amazing stuff, really. Does put him at 708k. But the reason I feel he's among the must-haves is because we are a bit light on with ruckman that we can feel confident with. And I feel like there's probably 4, maybe 5. I think in terms of secondary rucks, you've got Goldstein, you've got Martin, and there might be some people who do fancy some of those other options floating around there, but I think they're the guys. Westhoff is another one. But the fact is, for your top ruck spot, it's out of Grundy and Gawn. There's no doubt about it. It's a pretty even split overall. I thought a few would have been scared off by the Bruce factor. But look, I think you've got to have one of Gawn or Grundy. A lot of people will go both. But in my opinion, Grundy is a better pick simply because he's safer in terms of having that number 1 ruck spot, as I drop my pen, number 1 ruck spot locked in, and there will be no effect of anyone else coming in. Gawn, while an outstanding and unbelievable player, we don't know exactly how Bruce coming into the mix will affect him in points and in time. What's his ruck time look like? How many games will they even play in the same team? So the fact is, I think you need one of those 2 guys, and I'm favouring Grundy. So I think it's a must-have to have one of the 2, and Grundy's my pick of them. So yes, it's a lofty, lofty price tag. It hasn't been a pre-season for the ages, but he got up, played JLT, and looked really good. I think the way that he just finds the football like a midfielder, shoulders the ruck load brilliantly. I don't think we'll be seeing 130 again, but you never know. We're certainly going to see an outstanding average, and you may as well get him now because we know rucks can be extremely frustrating to get during the year, and finding an alternative could either cost you in points or value, or maybe both. So I think you've got to get him in. Number 3 on my list is Paddy Cripps. I think midfielders is where it's at. You know, they are scoring the biggest points. I guess Grundy says, that's nice, I'm outdoing you. But generally speaking, the midfielders are where we want to spend the big coin. They're the most reliable and have the highest ceiling and biggest averages over the journey. And the clear pick of our premium mids is Paddy Cripps. A superstar anyway, averaging a touch under 120. He looks to potentially be taking it to another level. You know, I think the rule changes will help him. He looks in immaculate nick, and he just looks like a guy who's just so comfortable with being the number 1 man at Carlton and taking on all the load that is thrown on him in that Carlton midfield, which is pretty inexperienced. But he seems to be happy to just be an absolute workhorse, capable of kicking goals, you know, capable of taking contested marks around the ground. He reads it probably the best in the game off the ruckman's hand. His clearance work is exceptional. Yes, he's priced at $6.48, but you've got to spend big on someone. I know I have been hesitant to spend up on the very top players in the past, but I think you've got to invest your coins somewhere, and it's hard to go past Cripps. There are some other very, very good midfielders that I think many will go with, but I think the safest, most reliable, and unbelievably room for improvement, I think an average in the 120s looks on the cards. Paddy Cripps is your man. So I think you've got to get him in. And in at number 2 is a teammate of his that we'll see on Thursday night, and that's Sam Walsh. I said I didn't want to have rookies in this, but Walsh seems to be in a different category because while he is technically a rookie, a first-year player, there's no thought of where he's going to be on our field. He's going to be on the ground. He's not going to be a rookie that's sometimes on the bench. You know, we're playing him, and he's looked amazing in the pre-season, probably exceeded expectation, and I think he's in about 70% of sides, which is an unbelievable number. Generally, the most popular players are around high 50s, you know, maybe early 60s, but every man and his dog has him. He's just, you've got to have him. He's just an absolute lock. He's priced at 207k, so you're paying an extra 80 odd for him opposed to another rookie. But I've never been more confident in the dividends you'll get. I haven't always jumped on the number 1 pick. I've often felt they're too expensive and you just don't know what you're going to get. There's no guarantee that they hit the ground running. But he looks like a guy I could average in the 80s. You know, he really does look like he produced some Daniel Rich numbers. You know, that first year I think Rich averaged 84 or 85. And the fact is Walsh is producing numbers that we haven't seen since Judd. You know, if you put it all together, what he's done in his junior days, Champion Data has him at the top of all these rankings, you know, and ball winning ability is right up there. He's going to get opportunities straight away. And Carlton looked pretty confident with him just playing like a seasoned player. You know, we'll get time around the stoppage. He's composed. He's got class. Yeah, he's going to have days where he scores a 60, but I think this is probably the best prospect under 220k that we've seen for some time. You know, he's just a guy that you've got to have. Every team I've seen has him. I don't think I've seen a team that doesn't. If you do, please comment and tell me why you're not going with him. But yeah, I think we've just got to have him. Number 1 on the list, and it'll come as no surprise, is Patrick Dangerfield. I just think it's so obvious that he is the number 1 must-have. If he was in the midfield, I think we'd be picking him, you know. At 660, yeah, he's expensive, but he's going to be playing probably more midfield time than we've seen in previous years, and he's just a superstar of the game. You know, he's capable of averaging right up there in the 120s. His body's been reliable. At times he's been tinkered in the forward line and that, but it does sound like while he will be played there at times, the conversation of, oh, maybe Dangerfield could be a 50-goal forward, that's been parked. You know, they want him in the guts. Ablett will be moved forward. Selwood will be moved elsewhere, and we've recruited for a new look forward line. I say we. Geelong has recruited for a new look forward line. Dangerfield's going to be in there doing what he does best, and that's winning the hard ball and exploding away from a stoppage. The fact that we can get him in the forward line, unbelievable. You know, generally speaking, when you pick your team, it boils down to who do you think is going to be the top 6 to maybe 8 defenders and forwards, and the top 10 to 12 mids, and probably top 3 or 4 rucks. You really want to end up with all your premiums in those brackets. And I don't think I've ever been this confident in saying that Dangerfield will be the number 1 forward. You know, I think sometimes we've had a Rockcliffe in there, or Robbie Gray, or maybe a Deledio when he was in the back line, Sam Mitchell. But Dangerfield is just so clearly going to be the highest averaging forward. You can just lock that selection and, just run off to the bank. You can absolutely go laughing. It's as good as you're going to get. So I think they are the top 5 must-haves for SuperCoach 2019. Some honourable mentions. I think Isaac Heaney is also a lock for your forward line. I think Whitfield could definitely be argued as a lock in the defence. And if we want to branch it out, you can always say Laird is a lock. And I think Dustin Martin is right up there with a lock too, to be honest, with a little bit of value involved. Some may argue Lib is a must-have mid-price. I didn't feel he was must-have. He's clearly a very, very good chance. But so certainly a few honourable mentions there. But in the end, I thought that was my top 5 must-haves. Let me know if you think I've missed anyone. Or feel free to comment your top 5 must-have players. If you think any of these guys have said aren't must-haves, well, feel free to tell me why. I'll be back soon. A team reveal will be out in the coming days, and I'll be in touch. Cheers.